She handed him a free coffee, thinking he was just another broke single dad. She didn't know he was the billionaire CEO who hadn't smiled in a year, and she was about to change his life forever. The early morning air in the city was heavy with fog and the bitter chill of late fall. Shop windows were still dark, sidewalks slick with dampness from the overnight drizzle. It was the kind of morning where most people walked fast, collars up, eyes down, chasing warmth and distraction. But Lucas Ryan wasn't most people, not anymore. He moved slowly, almost aimlessly, his 5-year-old daughter Emma holding tightly to his hand. Her yellow dress peeked out from under a too-thin coat, and her dark brown hair clung in wisps to her cheeks as she walked quietly beside him. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Even at 5, she could feel the weight pressing down on her father, a weight she couldn't name but instinctively understood. Lucas, once the sharpest mind in Silicon Valley, a CEO whose photo had graced magazine covers and whose speeches had filled auditoriums, looked nothing like the man people used to admire. His clothes were wrinkled, a plain light shirt tucked sloppily into worn jeans. His face was unshaven, his eyes hollow. He had spent the past year drifting through a fog heavier than the one that hung over the city streets, a fog made of grief, guilt, and silence. Since his wife had passed away, a sudden illness, a battle lost too quickly, Lucas had disappeared. Not publicly. His company still functioned. His name still appeared in headlines. But he was gone. Somewhere deep inside, buried beneath responsibility and sorrow, the man had gone dormant. Days bled into nights. Meetings became murmurs. And Emma became his only tether to anything remotely resembling life. They had left the apartment that morning without a plan. Emma had woken early, restless. Lucas, in his haze, had decided to walk. No destination, no reason, just to move, to escape the stillness of the walls closing in around them. That's how they ended up in front of the tiny cafe tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The kind of place he would never have noticed a year ago. The sign in the window read, "Open. Warm drinks, warmer people." It was a cheesy slogan, but somehow comforting. Emma looked up at him. "Can we go in, Daddy?" "My nose is cold." Lucas looked down at her and nodded. Inside, the cafe was dimly lit but cozy, smelling faintly of cinnamon, old wood, and brewed coffee. It wasn't glamorous. The tables didn't match. The floor creaked. But there was warmth in the mismatched furniture, in the laughter of a couple in the corner, in the tired but kind energy of the girl behind the counter. She was young, mid-20s maybe, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and a bright yellow apron tied around her waist. Her name tag read Selena. She was wiping down the counter, humming to herself when she saw them enter. Lucas hesitated near the register, reaching into his back pocket for his wallet. Emma clung to his coat sleeve, eyes scanning the pastries behind the glass. Selena looked up, noting the worn clothes, the tired eyes, the silent child. She didn't recognize Lucas. He wasn't wearing the suit, the watch, or the confidence. He looked like a man trying not to break, and she had seen that look before. Too many times. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His hand hovered awkwardly over his pocket. Selena took a breath, walked over to the counter, and without a pause poured a steaming cup of coffee. She placed a small muffin into a paper bag, folded the top, and set both items gently on the counter. With a soft smile, she said the words that would echo in Lucas Ryan's memory for the rest of his life. "Just keep the coffee." Lucas blinked. I didn't ask for—" "I know," she said kindly, "but sometimes people need something warm more than they need to ask for it." Emma looked up at her with wide brown eyes and whispered, "Thank you." Lucas took the cup, the bag, and stood there for a moment too long. He wanted to tell her who he was. He wanted to explain, to correct her assumptions. But something in him stopped, something fragile and aching. For the first time in months, someone had seen him. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, not as a failure. Just as a man, as a father, as someone who looked like he needed kindness. He led Emma to a corner table near the window. She sat, swinging her legs, and bit into the muffin happily. Lucas took a sip of the coffee. It was strong, not expensive, but it was the best coffee he'd tasted in a year. Outside, the fog slowly began to lift. Inside, something in Lucas stirred. It was small, but it was real. The cafe had begun to fill up by the time Lucas and Emma settled into their corner table. Through the large window, the city looked distant, like a world he no longer belonged to. People rushed past, bundled up and busy, unaware that something remarkable had just happened in this quiet little room. Lucas wrapped both hands around the warm cup, letting the heat seep into his fingers. Across the table, Emma ate her muffin carefully, crumbling off small pieces, savoring each bite as though it were made of magic. Occasionally, she glanced up at her father, unsure if she should speak. He noticed. "You like it?" he asked softly. She nodded, mouth full. "It tastes like birthdays." He smiled faintly, a genuine curve of the mouth that felt foreign but good. "Better than what I would have made." "You don't make muffins, Daddy," she replied with innocent truth. "Exactly." He watched her chew, her legs swinging slightly under the table. She didn't know about the weight he carried. She didn't need to. But for the first time in what felt like years, he felt like the fog inside him had cracked just slightly because of a stranger's voice and an unexpected gift. Selena moved around the cafe with practiced ease. She balanced trays, refilled cups, offered napkins to toddlers with sticky fingers. She was quick with a smile, but never fake. She greeted the regulars by name, laughed at bad jokes from an older couple by the window, and still somehow managed to glance toward the corner table from time to time, just enough to check on them. Lucas caught her eye once. She smiled. It wasn't polite, it was warm. Real. That smile did something to him. After a while, when the breakfast rush began to thin out, Selena returned behind the counter, tidying up the pastry case. Lucas stood up slowly, balancing his coffee in the muffin bag, and approached her. Emma trailed behind, holding onto the hem of his shirt. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and placed a few bills on the counter. Selena looked down, then back at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know," he said, "but I want to." She hesitated. Then, without touching the money, she asked, "Are you both okay?" Lucas didn't expect the question. Not like that. Not so gently. He looked down at Emma, then back at Selena. "We will be." That answer seemed to satisfy her. Emma peeked around her father. "Thank you for the muffin." Selena leaned slightly over the counter, her tone playful. "You're very welcome. You have great manners." "She gets them from her mom," Lucas said before he could stop himself. There was a beat of silence. Selena understood immediately. Her eyes softened, but she didn't offer empty condolences. She just nodded once, respectfully. "Well," she said, lifting a paper to-go cup, "maybe next time it's hot chocolate and 2 muffins. You're officially regulars now." Lucas gave a soft chuckle. "Is that how this works?" "It is in my cafe," she said with mock authority. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small white envelope. No logo, no name, just clean and folded. He set it down on the counter. "For you," he said, "for the coffee and the kindness." She blinked. "That's not necessary." "Neither was yours," he said simply. Then he turned, guided Emma toward the door, and stepped back into the cold morning. Selena waited until they were gone before she opened the envelope. Inside was 5 crisp $100 bills. Nothing else. No name. No business card. No note. She stood there in stunned silence. In her job, she'd seen a lot. Stingy millionaires in suits, noisy teens with headphones, kind old women who tipped in change. But she'd never had someone quietly hand her a week's worth of pay for something so simple. She walked to the window and looked out, but they were already gone. "Who are you?" she whispered. And in that moment, she didn't know that the man who had just walked out her door was one of the richest and most powerful people in the country. She didn't know that she had just fed the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the world. But she had seen something more important, a man who needed kindness and a little girl who still believed in birthdays. And that, she thought, was enough. For now. The following morning was quieter than usual. Lucas woke to the sound of rain pattering against the window, soft and rhythmic, as if the sky itself were trying to keep the world calm. He lay still for a while, listening. Emma had crawled into his bed sometime during the night and was now curled beside him, her tiny hand resting on his chest. She was warm, steady, the one thing that hadn't changed since everything else had. He didn't want to move. But eventually the morning crept in, and with it, the thoughts returned, the kind he couldn't run from. About the company emails piling up, the board meetings he hadn't attended, the friends who had stopped calling, and of course about her, his late wife, whose laugh he still heard in the silence. He got up slowly, careful not to wake Emma. The apartment was still dark, the kind of place filled with expensive furniture and no soul. The coffee machine blinked at him from the counter, and the cold marble floors reminded him how little warmth money could buy. Later that morning, Emma stirred, rubbing her eyes with small fists. "Daddy, can we go to the muffin place again?" Lucas looked at her. "You really liked it that much?" She nodded. "The lady was nice, and the muffin had cinnamon. Mommy used to make cinnamon muffins." His breath caught. "I miss Mommy," she added, not for sympathy, but as fact. "I do too," he said softly, reaching over to brush her hair from her forehead. "Get dressed. Let's go." The walk to the cafe felt different this time. The air was cool but not biting. Lucas had shaved. He wore a cleaner shirt. Not because he was trying to impress anyone, but because somehow he wanted to be seen again. Not by the world. By that one girl behind the counter who hadn't flinched when she thought he was poor. Who hadn't asked for anything in return. When they entered the cafe, the bell above the door jingled softly. Selena looked up from where she was wiping down a table near the window. Her ponytail was tied with a new ribbon, blue matching her eyes. She smiled when she saw them. "You came back," she said, genuinely surprised. "You invited us," Lucas replied. Emma ran ahead, climbed up into the same chair by the window as yesterday, and swung her legs while staring eagerly at the pastry display. Selena walked back behind the counter. "Let me guess. 2 muffins, 1 cinnamon, 1 blueberry, and coffee for Dad?" Lucas smiled. "You remember that?" "I remember most things," she said lightly, pulling out 2 fresh muffins and pouring the coffee. "Thank you. Again." Selena placed everything on a tray and handed it to him without hesitation. "Today you're paying, by the way." Lucas grinned. "Fair enough." They sat in their usual spot, and Selena returned to her shift. But something felt different now. Every few minutes their eyes met across the room. No tension, no flirtation. Just acknowledgement, like a silent conversation only they could hear. After Emma had finished half her muffin and was engrossed in drawing on a napkin with a crayon she'd pulled from her jacket pocket, Selena approached their table during a lull in customers. "She's a quiet kid," she said, glancing at the napkin. "She gets it from her mom," Lucas replied. "Smart, observant, fierce when she wants to be." Selena raised a brow. "Sounds like someone else I know." Lucas looked up. "You?" She shrugged. "I've had to be." There was a pause. "She said something yesterday that stuck with me," Selena continued, "that the muffin tasted like birthdays." Lucas chuckled. "Yeah, she has a strange way of explaining things, but she remembers everything." "I like that about her," Selena said softer now. "Most kids just want screens and noise. She just wants attention." "She lost her mom a year ago," Lucas admitted. Selena's face shifted instantly. Not with pity, but with quiet understanding. "I'm sorry." "Me too." They fell into silence. Not awkward, just real. Then Lucas asked, "Why did you do it?" "Yesterday. Why give us free coffee and a muffin?" She tilted her head. "Honestly, you look like someone who needed someone to believe in you, even if it was just through a cup of coffee." Lucas stared at her, and for a long moment, he couldn't respond. That single sentence hit deeper than she knew. "You were the first person in a long time who didn't expect anything from me," he said finally. Selena smiled. "Sometimes the best things in life aren't transactions." Before she could return to work, Emma held up her drawing. "I made this for you." Selena took it, smiling. 3 stick figures. 1 taller, 1 medium-sized, 1 small, all standing in front of what appeared to be a muffin the size of a house. "Is this us?" Emma nodded. "You're part of our muffin club now." Selena laughed, a real laugh. "That's the best club I've ever joined." Lucas watched them, something warming in his chest that had been cold for far too long. That day he didn't check his email, didn't answer his phone, didn't care about the stock market. He just watched his daughter smile, and the girl who had changed everything without even knowing it. That weekend, the city streets were painted with the soft gold of autumn light. Fallen leaves swirled gently across sidewalks, collecting in piles near curbs and doorsteps. The chill in the air was sharp, but not unfriendly. It was the kind of weather that made you pull your coat tighter and crave something warm. A cup of coffee, a soft conversation, or the feeling of being remembered. Lucas walked hand in hand with Emma toward the cafe again, the third visit in as many days. He wasn't sure when it had become a routine. He hadn't meant for it to be one. But something about the place pulled at him. The calm, the warmth, and the woman behind the counter who somehow saw through his silence without ever prying. Emma was talking the entire walk, about birds, leaves, and the dreams she had about a talking tree that baked pies. Lucas smiled as she spoke, nodding along, answering when she paused for breath. He cherished those little stories now more than ever. She was the last piece of his wife he had left. Every silly dream, every mispronounced word was precious. When they arrived, the cafe was less busy than usual. It was late morning, that strange in-between hour when the breakfast rush had ended, but the lunch crowd had not yet begun. The bell above the door rang softly as they entered. Lucas immediately noticed that Selena wasn't behind the counter. His heart skipped, just for a moment, before he saw her reappear from the back room, carrying a box of fresh pastries. She looked up, smiled, and that was all it took. "You're back," she said, placing the box down and brushing flour off her apron. "I was about to send out a search party." "We missed the muffins," Emma answered proudly, tugging her dad forward. Lucas chuckled. "Apparently, we're official members of the Muffin Club now?" Selena leaned forward over the counter. "I take that very seriously." "Can I help you today?" Emma asked, climbing up onto a stool before Lucas could stop her. "I know how to stir batter, and I can keep secrets." Selena laughed. "That's exactly the skill set I need." Lucas sat beside his daughter, still unsure how this simple cafe had become a place where he felt less like a man escaping his life, and more like someone slowly rebuilding one. As Selena handed them their drinks and muffins, cinnamon for Emma, black coffee for Lucas, she asked, "So what do you both do the rest of the day?" Lucas paused. That question used to have so many answers. Meetings, calls, decisions that move markets. Now it was harder to answer. "We're figuring it out," he said simply. Selena nodded. "I get that." She didn't press. Instead, she turned to Emma. "And you?" Emma beamed. "We're going to the park. I'm going to make a leaf pile big enough to bury Daddy in it." Selena laughed. "Well, take pictures." "We will," Lucas said, smiling. Then something changed in his tone. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Selena said. "Do you work every day?" "Most," she said. "2 jobs, actually. Here in the morning, then a bookstore in the evenings." Lucas blinked. "That's, a lot." "It is," she replied with a shrug. "But it's honest work. Pays the rent. Helps with tuition." "College?" "Nursing school. Part-time. It'll take forever at this rate, but I'm getting there." Lucas studied her. The way she held herself. The way her tired eyes still managed to shine. She didn't complain. She didn't make excuses. She simply did what she had to do. "I can't imagine that's easy," he said. "It's not," she admitted. "But I figure if I keep showing up, eventually, something will give." Lucas looked down at his coffee, thinking about all the people who had shown up for him simply because of his title, his bank account, his power. And here was someone who worked twice as hard for a tenth as much, and still found a way to be kind. Emma interrupted their quiet moment. "Can I give her something?" Selena leaned in. "What is it?" Emma pulled out another napkin drawing. This one showed a giant smiling muffin with arms, standing between 2 smaller figures. One girl, one woman. Above it, in shaky handwriting, "Thank you for being the nicest muffin boss." Selena held it to her chest, smiling so big it almost cracked the shell of exhaustion around her. "I'm framing this." Lucas felt something shift inside him again. A slow, quiet unraveling. As if all the parts of himself that had been frozen for so long were finally beginning to thaw. Later, as they got up to leave, Lucas lingered near the register. "You're good with people," he said to Selena. She smiled. "I just try not to make things worse." He hesitated. "You ever think about doing something else? Something bigger?" She tilted her head. "I think about it all the time." "Then maybe," he said, placing a folded card on the counter, "let someone help you for once." Before she could respond, he ushered Emma toward the door. Selena stared at the card after they left. No name on the front, just the initials LR in silver. She opened it. Inside was a phone number and a handwritten note. You believed in me when I looked like no one. Let me return the favor. No strings? Selena didn't know what to think, but something in her chest fluttered, like the first breath after a long, deep silence. The card sat on Selena's nightstand for 3 days. She picked it up, read the note again and again, turned it over in her hand, placed it back down. Every time she looked at it, something inside her tightened. Hope, maybe, or fear disguised as hope. The handwriting was strong but warm, unmistakably personal. You believed in me when I looked like no one. Let me return the favor. No strings. Selena had been offered things before. Not like this. Not from someone like Lucas. But from people who assumed her kindness meant she wanted something in return. Men who mistook generosity for invitation. She had learned the hard way to question motives, to expect conditions behind every offer. But Lucas, he was different. There was a weight behind his silence and sincerity in the way he watched Emma more than he spoke about himself. And she remembered what he said. You were the first person in a long time who didn't expect anything from me. She thought about him every day since. On the fourth morning before sunrise, Selena put on her coat, tucked the card into her bag, and took the long train ride downtown. She didn't text, didn't call. She just went. Not because she had decided to accept help, but because she needed to know who exactly was offering it. Lucas's office wasn't in a skyscraper like she imagined. It was in a modern building of glass and steel, surrounded by trees and a small reflecting pool. The entrance was quiet, minimal, not flashy. The receptionist looked up as Selena entered, clearly not expecting visitors this early. I'm here to see Lucas Ryan, Selena said, trying not to sound as unsure as she felt. Name? Selena Morris. He gave me a card. The receptionist typed something into her screen, then blinked. Oh, you're on his private list. I am? Yes, go right in. Elevator to the top floor. He'll meet you there. Selena stepped into the elevator alone. Her palms were sweating. She had never seen a view from this high, never stood in a space where the carpet cost more than her entire wardrobe. She hated how out of place she felt, and yet, a small part of her was curious. If Lucas was here, in all this power and silence, why had he walked into her little cafe looking like a man who had nothing? When the elevator doors opened, she found herself standing in a sun-drenched office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that looked like something from a movie. And in the middle of it all, seated at a simple desk, not far from a small play area scattered with crayons and a pink backpack, was Lucas. He stood when he saw her. You came. I wasn't sure I would, she admitted. I wasn't sure you should, he replied, offering a tired but genuine smile. She stepped forward slowly. This isn't what I expected. I figured. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lucas motioned to the chair across from his desk. Sit? She did carefully, folding her hands in her lap. I didn't bring you here to impress you, he said, or to make you feel like you owed me anything. I just wanted to be honest about who I am. Because you were honest with me, before you knew. Selena's eyes scanned the room. This is all yours? I built it, Lucas said. Piece by piece, startup to global. Then I lost myself somewhere in between. My wife died. I stopped seeing meaning in any of it. Until one day I walked into a cafe with my daughter and someone handed me coffee and a muffin like I was human again. Selena swallowed hard. That was just kindness. No, he said. That was grace. And it reminded me what mattered. He slid a folder across the desk toward her. She stared at it. What is this? A scholarship, he said. Full tuition, books, living stipend, accelerated program, nursing school. You qualify for every requirement. No strings attached. Selena looked up at him, blinking. Why me? Because you show up for people. Quietly. Because Emma adores you. Because you saw me when I couldn't even look at myself. And because I believe you're meant for something more than long shifts and minimum wage. She opened the folder. It was real. The kind of offer people wait lifetimes for. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Don't say anything now, he replied. Think about it. Take your time. The offer won't disappear. They sat quietly for a few minutes, the weight of the moment settling in. I don't want to be your charity project, Selena said finally. You're not, Lucas answered. You're someone I respect. She exhaled. The tension in her shoulders softened. Just then, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway. Daddy, I found my purple crayon. Emma burst into the office, full of energy, and immediately spotted Selena. Selena, she cried, rushing to her side. You came! Selena smiled, reaching out to hug her. Of course I did. Lucas watched them, the woman who saved him and the daughter who kept him alive. And something inside him settled. This wasn't about fixing someone. This was about building something. Together. That evening, as Selena rode the train home, the folder sat on her lap, unopened now but unforgettable. And for the first time in years, she didn't dread what came next. She looked forward to it. Selena didn't make a decision right away. That wasn't who she was. She wasn't impulsive, not when it came to something that big, not when it had the power to change everything. For the next few days, she went about her routine as always. Up at dawn, shift at the cafe, then the bookstore in the evenings. Only now, every movement was accompanied by the quiet hum of thoughts she couldn't ignore. The folder Lucas had given her never left her backpack. She hadn't told anyone about it, not even her roommate. It felt too precious, too strange, too unreal to say aloud. Each time she opened it at night, she found her breath catching when she read the words full tuition scholarship and saw her own name printed below. It was legitimate. It wasn't some vague promise or generic favor. It was tailored to her, because someone believed she deserved more. But that's what made it scary, because if she accepted it, it would mean letting go of the armor she'd built, the belief that no one would ever really show up for her, that she had to do everything herself. That self-reliance was the only form of safety, and yet when she closed her eyes, she saw Emma's face, that pure, open smile, the way the little girl ran to her as if she were already part of their family. And she remembered Lucas's voice, steady, soft, and without a trace of ego, when he said, "You're someone I respect." On the third evening after visiting Lucas's office, Selena stepped outside the cafe during her break. The night was cold, and her breath fogged in the air. She took out her phone, stared at the number he had written on the back of the card, and dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Hello? It's me," she said, her voice low. "Selena." "I was hoping you'd call," Lucas replied, sounding calm. "How are you?" "Confused," she admitted. "A little scared, but also curious." "That sounds honest," he said. "Want to talk about it?" "I don't know what to say." "Then let's say nothing," Lucas said. "Come over. Just spend time with us. No decisions, no pressure." She hesitated, then said, "Okay." The next evening, after her bookstore shift, Selena took a cab to Lucas's brownstone. She had never seen where he lived before. She expected it to be grand, sterile, and unwelcoming, like the homes of most men with too much money and too little time. But what she found instead was warmth. A modest, elegant home nestled on a quiet street, with soft lights glowing in the windows and the sound of laughter spilling from inside. Lucas answered the door in jeans and a sweatshirt, a kitchen towel slung over one shoulder. "Hi," he said, opening the door wider. "Hope you're hungry." She stepped inside, unsure of what to say. The smell of roasted vegetables and something sweet baking filled the air. "You cook?" she asked, surprised. "I try. Tonight is lasagna night, Emma's favorite." "Selena's here!" Emma shouted from the living room, leaping up from a pile of pillows and running into the hallway with Watson, the cat, trailing behind her. Selena dropped to her knees and caught the girl in a hug, laughing. "I missed you." "I made you a place at the table," Emma said proudly. "Next to me." Dinner was simple, messy, and real. Lucas was a decent cook. Nothing fancy, but every bite was made with care. Emma told stories between mouthfuls, swinging her feet under the table and occasionally feeding tiny pieces to the cat, who lounged under her chair. Selena hadn't felt that kind of peace in years. After dinner, Lucas made tea, and the three of them sat near the fireplace. Emma curled up with a book and eventually fell asleep in Selena's lap. The flicker of the flames reflected in Lucas's eyes as he watched them quietly. "She loves you," he said after a while. "She's easy to love," Selena replied, running a hand through the girl's hair. "So are you," Lucas said. Selena looked at him, startled, not by the words themselves, but by how gently he said them. as if he hadn't meant to confess anything. Just speak something true into the air. I don't know how to accept this, she said. All of it. The help, the quiet, you. You don't have to know yet, he told her. You just have to be here. She nodded and they both returned their gaze to the fire. There was no kiss, no big romantic gesture. Just two people, sitting with what was true and not rushing to name it. That night, Lucas carried Emma to bed and returned to find Selena still sitting by the fire. Her eyes closed, her body relaxed for the first time in days. You can stay, he said softly. Selena opened her eyes and looked at him. And for the first time in a very long time, she said, I think I want to. That evening, she left without giving an answer about the scholarship. She didn't need to, but something had shifted. The girl who always said no, just to protect herself, had finally started saying maybe. And that, Lucas knew, was the beginning of everything. The morning after her quiet evening by the fire, Selena awoke with a feeling she hadn't felt in a very long time. Calm. Not the kind that comes from sleep, but the deeper kind. The kind that comes from being seen, safe, and understood. She hadn't stayed the night at Lucas's house, but when she left, it was with the knowledge that she could have, that it would have been welcome, that there was a place for her there, not out of obligation, but by quiet invitation, and that changed something in her. At the cafe, her regular customers noticed it too. She smiled more easily, moved more lightly, laughed without forcing it. Her coworker Maya nudged her behind the counter at one point and whispered, Okay, who is he? Selena rolled her eyes and muttered, Just someone who makes good coffee at home. But Maya wasn't buying it. Girl, you're glowing. It's not the espresso. Selena brushed it off. She wasn't ready to talk about Lucas out loud. She was still trying to believe he was real, that this thing unfolding between them was not a dream or a setup, but something honest and rare. That afternoon, as she was finishing her shift, a courier arrived with a small package addressed to her in tidy handwriting. She frowned, signed for it, and opened it near the back counter while Maya looked on nosily. Inside was a hardcover journal wrapped in tissue paper and a note slipped between the first pages. It read, Because you write the world with more grace than most people live it. L. Selena's throat tightened. She hadn't told Lucas about her journaling. She thought about how he must have noticed her scribbling in a notebook during breaks, or how Emma once peeked into her bag and called it her secret storybook. Maya took one look at the note and sighed, Okay, now I need to meet him. Selena blushed, closed the journal and placed it gently in her bag like something sacred. That evening, Lucas texted her, Dinner at our place, just us. Emma says she's making dessert. She replied simply, I'll bring tea. When she arrived, Emma greeted her at the door in an apron 4 sizes too big, holding a bowl of cookie dough with chocolate smeared on her cheek. We're baking, she announced. I only ate 2 of the chips. That's a record. Selena laughed and tousled her hair. Save me one, okay? Lucas stood in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, setting the table. We're going domestic now, apparently, he joked. You wear it well, she said, stepping in and setting the tea on the counter. Dinner was cozy, pasta and garlic bread. Nothing extravagant. But Selena couldn't remember the last time she sat at a table where every moment felt both ordinary and extraordinary, where conversation flowed like warmth through the room, where a child's laughter and a man's steady glance felt like the heartbeat of something new. After Emma went to bed, one cookie in hand, one saved for Selena, they returned to the living room. The fireplace glowed again, and this time they sat closer. Lucas turned to her, more serious now. You never told me. Did you make your decision? She looked down at her hands for a long time, then up at him. Yes, she said. His face didn't change. He just waited. I'm saying yes, to the scholarship, to the chance, to all of it. Lucas nodded once. I'm glad, but I'm also scared, she admitted. He reached for her hand, slowly, deliberately. Good. That means it matters. They sat there in silence for a moment, fingers lightly intertwined. I don't want you to fix my life, she said. I know, he replied. I just want to be part of it. She leaned against his shoulder, eyes closed. That's all I've ever wanted. Later, as the fire dimmed and the house quieted, Lucas kissed the top of her head and, for the first time, She let herself rest in the moment. No backup plans, no exit strategies. Just this. Outside, the wind stirred the last leaves from the trees. Inside, two people who had once lost too much found something quietly whole again. And it didn't need a label. It just needed time. It was a Saturday morning in early spring when everything finally came full circle. The sky was pale blue, the kind that promised warmth without delivering it quite yet. And the trees lining Lucas's quiet neighborhood had just begun to bloom with soft, pale flowers. The windows of the brownstone were open, letting in a crisp breeze that smelled faintly of earth and sunshine. Inside, the hum of life echoed gently. Emma sat on the floor of the living room surrounded by colored pencils, working intently on a new drawing. Watson the cat dozed beside her, twitching occasionally in a dream. The house smelled like brewed coffee, toasted bread, and something softer, something human and deeply comforting. Lucas stood at the kitchen counter pouring orange juice into two glasses, watching Selena from across the room. She was reading something, a textbook for her new nursing program, legs curled beneath her on the couch, hair loose over one shoulder. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, and her lips moved slightly as she read. He smiled to himself. There were still moments when he couldn't believe this life was real, that the woman who had handed him a muffin without knowing his name now existed in his world like she'd always belonged, that his daughter had someone to laugh with, to learn from, to love, not as a replacement for what was lost, but as a new chapter written with care. "Taking a break soon?" he asked, setting the juice down beside her. Selena looked up and softened at the sight of him. "5 more pages. I'm timing you. I'm terrified." He leaned down and kissed her temple before walking back to help Emma with the pencils. The sound of her quiet humming filled the room, and for a brief, extraordinary moment, time felt like it had paused just to honor this piece. Later that afternoon, they walked to the park. Not the busy one downtown, but the small local garden Emma loved because it had a hidden corner filled with daisies and uneven benches. Lucas rolled along the path with ease now, far more comfortable in his wheelchair than he had been months before. Selena walked beside him, Emma running ahead to chase butterflies that weren't there. They sat on a bench as Emma built a pretend castle from sticks and leaves. Selena leaned against Lucas's shoulder, the warmth of him grounding her. "You know," she said, "when I was younger, I always believed my life would be small, quiet, practical, just enough. That was the goal." He glanced at her. "And now? I don't want small anymore," she said. "Not because I want fame or money. I just want full. I want every breath of it. I want to matter. To someone. To myself." He reached over and took her hand. "You already do." "I didn't know that until you walked into my cafe," she said, "and I thought you were just another man with nothing left." "I was," he replied, "and you gave me something back." They didn't need to say more. The quiet did the talking for them. That evening, back at the brownstone after dinner and laughter and Emma's long, dramatic bedtime story, Selena sat on the front steps while Lucas cleaned up. The moon had risen, pale and low, and the night carried the faintest scent of lilacs. He joined her outside, blanket over his lap, 2 cups of tea in hand. "You okay?" he asked. "More than okay," she said. "Scared sometimes, but good scared." Lucas took a slow sip and nodded. "You know, I used to think love was supposed to look like the movies. Big speeches, lightning bolts. And now," she asked, "now I think it looks like burnt garlic bread, cat hair on the couch, and a little girl calling someone else her favorite person." Selena smiled. "Your second favorite, huh?" "I've accepted my place." She laughed, then grew quiet. "Lucas," she said. "Yeah? Have you thought about what comes next?" He looked at her. "All the time. I mean for us. I think," he said slowly, "we build it. One day at a time. Not because we have to. Because we choose to." She turned to him, touched his cheek. "I choose you." His voice was quiet but firm. "Then let's start forever. Slowly." In that moment, there was no ring, no proposal, no camera-ready moment. But there was commitment. Trust. Love that had been earned, not in one sweeping gesture, but in countless small ones. A muffin, a cup of coffee, a quiet smile, a hand offered without strings. They sat together on the steps for a long time, watching the moon rise, their fingers linked and still. And somewhere inside the house, Emma's drawing sat on the kitchen table. A picture of three stick figures holding hands under a crooked roof. She'd written one word beneath it in bold letters: home. To me, the beauty of this ending lies in its quietness. There are no dramatic speeches, no extravagant declarations, just two people, deeply wounded in different ways, choosing each other in small, steady steps. Selena, who spent most of her life surviving, finally begins to believe she deserves more than just enough. Lucas, a man once surrounded by noise and power, learns to find meaning in the stillness, in burnt toast, bedtime stories, and the sound of someone staying without being asked. I love that their forever doesn't come with a diamond ring or a cliffside vow. It begins with tea on the porch, a shared blanket, and a child's drawing labeled home. Because sometimes the most profound stories are not the loudest. They're the ones built on trust, healing, and the courage to begin again. This ending, in my eyes, isn't a finale. It's a promise that love doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it begins with a muffin.